I'm starting the recording now. We'll see how that works. I was having some issues with the recording encoder. I'm going to have to play with to make sure that we don't overrun our ability to capture the video. But I just started the recording now, and anyone who is late or tries to watch us on video will miss that enormously funny joke. Anyway. Couple things to take note of. We do want you to attend labs, so please try to attend labs on time. I'm trying to be a little bit flexible because of time zone issues. I had, as of last night at 10 p.m. or so, I had about I had exactly two people who had signed up for, or who had told me that they had issues with, who had set me their times for alternate labs. I think one of them decided that he didn't need to, so that leaves us with one person. So if that's good, we'll try to work something out, but I may ask you just to go to one of the office hours with the TAs. We're trying to set those up. We'll have those set up by the end of the week. But if you do have any issues, I did post that last week. I'll post it again into our Discord. You should be on the Discord. That's going to be the main way that I talk to you, including telling you to come to this meeting instead of WebEx. Hopefully, like I said, this will work out. There's a question in the chat about whether this class counts as a capstone. Any CS 4000 level course that, or in the concentration is actually what it's called. Any 4000 level course will count towards, either a named course, right, like operating systems, or will count towards your concentration. The registrar is not always up on all these, and DegreeWorks does have issues, so if you're not seeing it, you can trust that it is the case. Check it out with your advisor, and I will try to remember to talk to Professor Goldschmidt. He's the keeper, the mighty keeper of the official registrar paperwork. He will set that up for you. But I do know that people have taken this course and have graduated, so that's a positive thing. And you can't always rely on DegreeWorks, believe it or not. I've found more problems with DegreeWorks and particularly Haas courses than I like to think about. All right. Where do we go from here? If you go to, I think the first thing to do is let's just go and take a look at a few things. I didn't set up a formal housekeeping page today. I probably should have. But let's just look at wow, that's kind of funky. I'm looking for my Discord server down in my tray, and I'm not finding it. Okay, here it is. So here's the Discord server. Okay, we are in open source software, spring 2021. I'm going to turn myself off because that looks like very funky. Okay, we've just jammed up my system for a second. Give me just a second here. That little infinite regression there just kind of busted things. Okay. Try this one more time. Nope. This is going to take a little bit of getting used to, and maybe a little bit more setup than I currently have. So please bear with me for just a few minutes. Okay. All right, forget that. It's not working. If you go into our Discord server, we have open source software. Spring 2021 is a new group, and then I have a link for additional, or I have a room for important links. If you go to the important links directory, that will get you to where you need to be. It has the when is good for time zone issues. If you do have, if you're good, if you can attend our labs at the scheduled lab times, that's great. Please continue to do so. If you can't, if you're having issues, then please fill that out, and I will try to get. We're going to be talking with my TAs over the next, my TAs and mentors over the next day or so to try to set up alternate times for lab. For those of you who can't make this one, because we do want you there, we want you participating, we want you interacting with your classmates, but we don't want you necessarily being up at 3 a.m. in the morning or having to completely flip around your schedule. So please, if you need it, please help us out. Otherwise, everything should be good. And of course, my Google is going bonkers. So let's try something different. The problem I'm currently having appears related to Google having too many things running. So I am Xing out of Google. I guess I'll need to try this. Okay, let's see if we can get this set up correctly. I'm still not projecting anything, am I, guys? Okay. Just the blacks. Now you're getting my whiteboard. Okay, so now let's get it set up so we're doing some real work. There should be my thing, and now we just gotta set it up to a proprietary, not open source tool. We don't want desktop audio. We want lecture slides. There we go. Believe it or not, I spent decent amount of time in the 2 hours before this class getting everything set up so it works smoothly. And then I turned it on, and things kind of went bad. And now I'm wondering whether this web app is just a little too heavy for what we're trying to do. But we'll give it a couple of tries, and we'll see where we get to. I think it's a good. I like the idea of letting you guys talk amongst yourselves. There's a lot of stuff about it I like, but if we can't record and do lectures, then we're going to have problems. What we want to talk about today is Git. Now, hopefully, most of you are already familiar with Git. Hopefully, most of you have already used Git. But what I want to talk about it is I want to talk about it in the context of doing software development and actually getting yourself set up so that you can actively participate in different communities. And then we'll talk about some things like how to use Git to manage a project, how to work in an open source environment with it, etc., at least to some degree. And hopefully a lot of this is review, but this is like the great leveler. We need everybody to be on the same page and working together so that we can know how we're going to interact. And for those of you who took the Git workshop with the coordinators of Arcos, I've never taken that. I should probably sit in on it at some point. But please let me know if there's things from there that I need to pull in and things that I don't need to pull in. The reading material for this, Pro Git, it'll help you out a lot. I've read it a couple of times. I didn't reread it completely this year, but just read the first 4 chapters will get you a long ways. You don't need to be a power user of Git to be effective. You need to be a moderate user. I prefer, by the way, there's all sorts of interfaces for it. I mentor a first robotics team, and they have their own way of using Git, and most of them use it from the Git, either from VS Code or from the GitHub tool. I can't do that. I'm not all that. I like being able to type things, so I use it from the command line almost exclusively. But you should be able to do the command line, because if you can do the command line, you can do anything else, right? Yeah, by the way, now that we have you guys in here, I'm getting a lot of encoding overloaded errors on my recorder. So hopefully this recording comes out smooth enough that we can actually make it work. Git is pretty easy to install. It installs on all systems. You can find instructions here, right? You should be able to install it on Linux, on Mac OS X. If you are installing it into the WSL, I believe that I just use sudo apt-get sudo apt install git or something like that. So it does install really nicely. If you go to the Git web page, you can get it installed. It probably already comes with WSL. I don't actually remember installing it, but the installation instructions are there. The lab, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some stuff. And we're going to walk through a lot of examples. Keep up if you can. That would be great. If you can't, well, that's okay too. Because as long as you have Git installed by next Friday, by Friday this week, you will be able to walk through the lab, and that'll walk you through a lot of the same steps and give you a little bit more practical hands-on. But if you want, you can follow along with me as I kind of type through some things. Once you have Git installed, it's pretty important that you mark who you are. And the reason is, if I now go to, let's say I want to go to, I don't know, let me go to GitHub. I don't necessarily need to go to Team 20. Team 20 is my first robotics team that I work with. But if we come in here and let's say we go to this class, which is up here, you can get to it. And by the way, this is where we are today. We're in modules, module 02 Git. I have some nice learning objectives. So we want you to learn the importance of modern version control software, set up and use a local Git repository, and configure and use remote repositories, and most importantly, set up usable workflows. The material's here. Download it, open it up. You can get to all the slides that I'm using. That's all great. Not really what I want to show you. What I want to show you is something that's pretty important on a couple of different levels. One, part of your grade this semester is going to be on the effort you put in to your open source projects. And we're not going to count, lines of code are great. We're not going to exclusively count lines of code. Documentation is equally great, as are a lot of other things that you can do. As are a lot of other things you can do. I guess that's a good way to do it. So maintaining an open source, and we'll talk about this a little bit next semester, not next week, but maintaining an open source community. The code is an important output of the community, but the community is necessary to generate the code. So a lot of what you need to do in supporting an open source community is you need to do things that improve the community. And this can be documentation, this can be testing, this can be setting up, doing issue tracking, setting up issues, creating issues, triaging issues. There's all sorts of ways to contribute. And the thing is, part of your grade is going to depend on doing those things in your community. And that's why this thing that we're doing with setting up your name is so important, because I can come in here and I can see myself, W.D. Turner, or I can see MSK Morthy, and if we want, I can click down here and I can see all my commits, right? And I can go through these. I can see that they are flagged to me. I should be a verified. I'm not seeing verified, but that's okay. You can come through here, and it's very easy to attribute the effort that's been done to the people who have done the effort. And it's easy to do that because Git knows or GitHub knows who I am. So what we want to do in setting up our repository, once we have our Git going, full screen the shared window. How do you pinch and zoom? You must have a Chromebook. I will try running this on Firefox next time, because I was wondering the same thing. That's one of the things that I spent a lot of time on today. On Chrome, you can right-click and go to Show Controls, and from there you can. Okay. You guys are making me do this on my monitoring thing. All right, good. Thank you all. See, that's why we have these tables in the chat, is so that everybody can kind of talk here. Firefox greater than Chrome. I use one until it gives me problems, and then I switch shamelessly. I have no brand loyalty. Okay, so we can come in here and we can do something like Control-C. I'll go down and I'll switch my screen to be something else. Hopefully this one will work. There we go. Now I just got to find that screen. Way down here. All right. So Git allows you to specify who you are. And you can specify who you are in a couple of different ways. One way you can do it is, you can specify several pieces of information. One thing you can specify is your username, right? So this is the name that you want to be known as on GitHub. Mine is WD Turner. I'm going to mess it up if I type too many things in, so I'm just going to tell you, type in your username here. I'll do WDT for now. And you want to put in your Gmail, so I could do git config -- global user.email, and I don't want to be Morthy, but I do. Maybe I'll make this Turnu2 at rpi.edu. And by the way, I need to remember to turn these back. Sonfig is not a word. So we will config it, git config. And if we look now, well, let me see what the next thing I'm supposed to show you is. And another nice thing to throw in there, just because it makes it, right, when you do something like a Git Status or something, is it makes it easier to parse, is we can do something like man, I thought I pushed those. We can do git config -- global color.ui, and we'll set that to auto, and that gives us the nice colors. So these are just when we do this git config, we're configuring Git. Obviously, global says do it for everybody. There's global and there's local flags or properties. So global will do it for every Git repository you have on your machine, which is kind of nice because then you only have to do it once. Most of these things don't change. You can override this with a local value if you'd like, if you need to for a specific project or a specific, if you're doing consulting and you want to have one of them be, Turnu2 at rpi.edu because you want that to be associated with RPI and you want the other one to be your freelance gig. You can do that by configuring locally. And if you want to see what you've done, you can come in here very easily and do a git config -- global -- list. And that'll tell you everything you have configured. And you can also do a git config -- local -- list, which will tell you things specific to the current repository you're in. And if we look, I'm in, let's do the git status again. I'm in the course website, 4470 open source. I need to set those things back, so give me just a second here. But you can see that they're set to WDT instead of WD Turner, and it's set to Turnu2 instead of my my Gmail account. So I found out a year or two ago that somebody else has a very similar email to me, and I kept getting invites or requests to confirm that I was going to be at different craft shows throughout the country, mainly in the Florida area. And it turns out that the person who has, one of the people that I found several that are close to me now. I also get bills from power companies and such. But one of the people who has something close to my name is a craftsman who does wood turnings. So apparently he thought it would be cool to have WD as wood turner for crafting, I guess, different wood products or lathing different things, which is kind of a pain in the neck. Okay, so I'm back now. I won't be checking in anything incorrectly. Another really good thing, really important thing, is generating an SSH key. For this one, we need to kind of head out. We'll go back to our repository here. An SSH key allows you to work much more smoothly with Git. It identifies you. It's a unique identifier that identifies you to Git and identifies your commits as having come from you without having without the need for you to verify yourself with the password, challenge response, username, password every time. So these are pretty easy to set up as well. We're going to come in here and we'll come into our repository, come up, find yourself up in the corner here, come down and find settings. And this should bring you to a settings page. And then just come down here and do SSH and GPG keys. You can see that I have some keys here. These are public keys. When you generate a SSH or GPG key, you generate a private public pair. You should keep the private one to yourself. Don't share that with anybody. The public one you can put out on things like GitHub, and that's by using the public one to decrypt things that were encrypted with the private one. You can kind of get the benefit of it allows you to securely identify yourself. It's pretty easy to generate a key. I think if we're on WSL, right, we can just come in, we can do an SSH. Yeah, that didn't come across. I will type it in. Okay, so it's SSH keygen. And we want to generate an RSA key. So we'll do -t RSA. The number of bits that you want, 4096. And then we'll associate it with, for example, wdturner@gmail.com. So don't use wdturner, use your own email. And I'm just going to save these into temps so that I can just kind of open them up. I never use a passphrase because I'm worried that I'll forget it. So I don't actually do that. And you can do it randomly like that. And you can now look at it, and we can look at both the public, right? The public one is the temp.rsa.pub, right? And we could actually just click up here and copy it, and then go into add a new SSH key and paste that in. Okay? And that's a new public key. I'm not going to actually paste this in because I don't really need this one. But that's how you would add it. If we go back, you guys couldn't actually see that, could you? Yes, you could. Awesome. Cool. So that's what the public key looks like. And then if we want, we can look at the private key, which is why I'm not going to use this one, because once I've shown the private key, you guys with, very fast cameras can probably pick this up. Actually, I'm going to publish this publicly. So this is a private key associated with the public key. You put these into your .ssh directory. And if I come back in here and look at .ssh, right, there's my public and private keys. Okay, so anyway, that's the private public pairs. The public one you're able to share. The private one you shouldn't share. And I'm going to remove. It's probably not a good idea to broadcast your public one wildly either, but it there. Okay, so I'm clean on that. And that'll actually save you a lot of time typing in passwords. So if you were going to move these, you would just do a copy, temp RSA, for example, or temp RSA star into /.ssh. Or generate them there. You come into GitHub, you paste your key here. I always put something on here that tells me at least where it was generated so I can go back and find it again if I need it. But that's not really very important. It's just for your own notational value. All right. Any questions about that? Let me see if I can go into my... Got a little discussion. Cannot see your terminal, just the web browser. You were able to see the web... I messed up a couple of times switching, but sometimes you were able to do it, right? Hopefully. If not, it's in the notes. Okay. Good enough. Excellent. I'm wondering how much lag we're having. It doesn't look like I'm having too many issues right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not. I'll just show you that the slides are here, going all the way back to the configuration. Generated a new key. Okay. Once you've done that, it's always nice to get a verification that the things are actually working. So GitHub, at least provides you with the ability to do that. So you can do Git. It'd be better to have that down here. -T. Sorry. It is not a Git, it is an SSH. To test the SSH protocol. And it tells you who it thinks you are, right, which you should have configured. That should be your GitHub name, and that you successfully authenticated. It won't let you actually log in. Yeah. All right. So that should get you all set up. I think that's all we need to do to get you all set up with Git. On GitHub. So now we can do some things, right? Like, for example, in your GitHub account, you can create, in the GitHub repository or someplace, we can make a new directory. So I'm just going to do it here for now. I need more screens. This is easier in person. I had multiple screens. So I can do, make a directory. I can cd into the directory. And, oops, I'm sorry. Let's go back to my home. I'll do this in spring 2021. And I'm going to call it exercise 05, I think, because I think I already have an exercise 01. But you guys can use exercise 01. Go into it. We can create a new Git directory here, a new Git repository here by doing a git init. Right, this creates an empty repository. The only thing in this repository right now is our .git directory, and the .git directory shouldn't have a whole lot in it. Just some standard things. Branches is where it'll keep the branches. All the stuff that it needs to be able to reference things, but there is no code in it yet. Okay, so we can come in. We've done our git init. We can add something like a Readme file. I mean, in general, what we would want to add immediately would be a Readme and a license. We'll talk about licenses in a few weeks. But we can come in and we can add a Readme file, and I can say I made a new repository and named it exercise 05. Because I don't remember if I deleted 01. Okay, and this can be, we're doing this as a markdown file, so we can do something like, use markdown to make this look cool or important. Right, get out of it. And you can use whatever editor you want. It's pretty much editing agnostic. I use Vim or MVim or GVim or whatever flavor of Vim I can actually find. Our slides have a little bit of a review of if you are in one of the other editor camps. And I don't want to start holy wars, but you should know that you're wrong. But if you're in one of the other editor camps, Vim is almost always available. So it's good to know at least enough Vim to get you to where you can download something else. So, this is how you would edit the README. You want to be in insert mode, so you'd probably go either an I or an A to get into insert mode, either insert or append. So this is the actual commands. I type what you want, the escape key, and then WQ ends the file. A little bit of tutorial, just enough to do this simple example. And we can look at this now, right? So we can come in here and we can say, we can say, ls-la, readme's there, the .git is there. We can do a less on the readme right, to see what's in it. And we can look at, in this repository, we can now look at what the status of a repository is. And what we'll find out is that we're on branch master. It always defaults to branch master. We haven't made any commits yet, so it can't actually show us any stats on commits. And it's telling us right now that we have one untracked file, right? And that one untracked file, surprisingly, is the README that we just generated. So Git Status is your friend. Make sure you know Git Status. It'll tell you what you have, what you need to do. Now we want to go through and we want to make sure, well, there's a slide that just shows exactly what I just showed you. Okay, so now what we want to do, we have in our Git repository, the status of our Git repository is our Git repository was clean before we added the README. Right now, our working directory does not match the contents of our Git repository. Because we have a file sitting there, readme.md, that hasn't been added to the repository, but that's in, essentially where we're actually storing our code for the files for our repository. So we can tell Git to add that file. And by the way, use the add whether you're adding a new file or whether you're adding changes from that you've made to a file. And so git add adds it in, and if we look now, what we'll see is we have a little bit different status. Instead of red, README is green. And it's telling us that it has a new file, readme.md, and the fact that it's in green and has this changes to be committed, that means it's staged and ready to be added in. This gives you an opportunity to look through stuff and make sure that you're staging, that you're adding the right stuff in. I always use a two-step process because it keeps a lot of garbage from coming into your repository. If you get to this stage and you're expecting 3 files and you have 300 files, you probably committed an object tree that you don't want to do, and you can get back from that. So we could always go something like git reset. Right, and we're back. README is still in the directory, but it's not ready for not ready to be staged. All right, so we now have it staged, ready to commit. The next thing to do is to actually commit it into the repository. And to get it into the repository, we just need to do a git commit. If you do a git commit with no flags, it will bring you into an editor. It's probably a good way to go. For me, that defaults to the Vim editor. Generally, when you're writing comments or when you're writing commit comments, you would put something in here that's kind of the header line, something that says what you're doing. And I will write boring the class by doing too much git. And then that should be about 80 characters or less. It's just a quick message. And then down here you can put in whatever you want. This can be longer if you would like. So when we do some of our Git logs to see what our commits were, it's going to tell us pretty much this. But when you want to go in and look more deeply at what a commit does, you can have a message here. So what's a good thing to put in this? I think is the next slide. Well, Git is pretty smart. Git Okay. We're a little verbose on this. I forgot to mention that you want to put in a subject line, kind of the header. Then you want to skip a line. Then you can write an entire paragraph or a treatise or your dissertation, whatever you want to write here. And you can have as many of these as you like. right? So we can come in here, we can make this as long as we want. Somewhere in here I should get to, there we go. The thing to remember is that Git, because we did our SSH thing, because we're identifying ourselves, Git already knows who we are. So you don't have to put in, you know, this is Wesley Turner, I'm doing this commit and it was committed by me, right? We don't need to do that. Git's also going to time tag it, timestamp it. So we're going to know when this goes in as well. So who and when are not very important things to put into the repository. What is more important is to put in, oh, and even the what isn't all that important, right? In terms of all the files will be called out. All the files in your commit will be part of the commit. So you don't have to say what files, and you don't have to say what lines, right? Because all of that is going to be covered by Git. Git maintains a difference between successive versions. So these questions are not very important. What are important is the header should tell you something important about why you did this change, right? I did this change because you guys were too active and needed to be calmed down a little bit. We wanted to ease into a nice boring day, so I put in a commit that was nice and boring. And then down in here, you want to talk about things that are important, right? You don't need the who, what, when. What you should have is this is in response to bug number or issue number 57623. We found out that you know, you needed a period after all sentences in order to be grammatically correct. You know, say why you did it or describe the change at a higher level than at the level of individual lines. Most of the time, you can use the -m flag. I'll show you that in just a second, I think. Oops. To avoid that. So if you only are going to put a header in, and a lot of times you want to do that, there's really a nice little shortcut where you can do, instead of git commit and going into the editor, you can come in here and you can say this is the subject line. I expect if you're clever, you can get all the lines in. But if you do this, then you don't have to go into the editor. That kind of has the same impact. We can do a git log now. Well, let's see. Now we'll do a git status. Okay, we're now clean again. Right, when we did the commit, it brought in our subject line. It now tells us we're on branch master. Nothing to commit. The working tree is clean. Everything that we have has been committed. And we can do something like a git log to actually see what it is we put in. So the git log gives us a bunch of information. First, it gives us a unique identifier for the commit, and it pushed it into the head of master. It tells who did it, including my email address that I set up. It tells us, again, I told you it was going to tell us when, or it knew when, so this is when we did it. And this is the message we put in, our subject and our paragraphs. So let's look a little bit at this life cycle we just went through. We started off, we had a clean repository. We added a file, and when we added a file, our repository went from clean to staged to a file that was untracked. Readme.md was not in our file system to begin with. We added the file. When we did the git add, we went into the staged category, right? We started off with an untracked file. The file was added in. Then we did giving us an untracked state. Then we added it in. We went to staged. once we do our commit, we go back into the unmodified state, and now everything's clean. If we come in here now and we edit the file, come on, I just put away my switcher. Okay. My quick switcher just got accidentally closed. We can come in, we can edit the file, we can do vim readme. Type something in there. Right, and now we're back in, we're in a state where we've got red again. We have a file. This time, instead of being new or untracked, it's been modified. Right, so we're now down in this area. We can stage the file the same way, right? Git status, git add, and then we can commit it and get back to unmodified. We can also remove a file, and if we remove a file from the repository without removing it from the disk, then we're back to the untracked state. Okay, so this is kind of like all the possible states that a file can be in. A file can be untracked, it can be tracked but not modified, it can be modified, it can be staged to go into the next commit, and then you cycle back and forth by adding files. Actually, we should have another add coming from, oh, I'm sorry, here it is. If it's modified, we stage it. That also is the add command, although it looks like a different command. All right. And locally, right, your repository can either, you're looking at your working directory. Your working directory can either match the repository, or you can have files that are new or modified. If they're new or modified, you can stage them. They go to the staging area. Committing those moves them into the repository, and then when you check out the repository, you get yourself back to a clean state. If you're the one who's doing the commits, once you've done the commit, your working directory will be up to date. But in order to get commits from somebody else, you'll have to pull those in as well. All right. So what we have at this point is we have a repository I may have to get that fast shooter back again. Okay, we have a repository that has a file with README in it. I'm going to do a git add quick. I'll add -u, says don't add any new files, but any old files that have been modified, add in. We can do a git status, git commit, and I'll do the -m this time. So I don't go into the editor. And now we can look at git status again, and we have, we're back to clean. And if we do an ls here, we just have the two files, which is all very well and good. But this still isn't on GitHub. This is on our current local Git repository. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to push this out so that if we're doing an open source project in particular, we want everybody to be able to use it. And quite honestly, I should actually put a license in here, but GitHub provides some nice utilities for doing that, and we'll kind of rely on GitHub for that part. The problem is Git knows about our local repository. Git doesn't know about anything outside of that. So what we need to do is we need to add in we need to tell it where it can push things when we want to push them out to the great blue yonder there. So this is a local. The repository on your computer, on your laptop, is a local repository. Something outside, like GitHub, is a remote repository. So we store our remote repositories in a place called remote on Git. And we currently have no remotes, right? No remotes, but we can create one. So let's do a git remote add, and we're going to call this origin because we want everybody. This is going to be where we're going to store things. Despite the fact that we created it on our laptop, we're going to be using Git as our foundation of truth, as it were. So we're going to call this origin, and that's a pretty common name. I mean, that's one of the ways these repositories are set up. Origin is where you push back to. So it's good from the standpoint of community mores and customs. So we'll do that, and now we have to give it a address, and I am going to give it http:/. You'll see this is worthies when we do it, when you see the slides, but I'm going to put it in mine, which is WD Turner, and I'm going to call it exercise 5 because I think I already have an exercise 1. Right, so that gives us a new remote. And that tells us we have a fetch and a push remote on it. You can set it up so that you fetch from one place and push to another if you're doing like automated testing or different configurations of Git workflows. But for right now, this is good. And now we should be able to push git push -u origin. And hopefully it'll give us this error message because I can never remember what this error message is. And then push it then. You notice that once we do that, it actually gives us our existing repository command line. So we will do this. That looks like GitHub HTTPS. Okay, and now we should be able to okay. I'm going to change that out. Once you get your SSH keys in, this challenge response thing is not what we want to do. We actually want to use the SSH one. So you want to come up here and click on SSH and use that. And once you do, everything works far more nicely. And pretty much like what the slides said, except I do need to change that. I do need to change that to be. I'm going to change that to be the SSH. So hold on to that idea. All right. Let's see. Any questions? Let me see what the questions are. We've got chat in everyone. 23 new chats. So Kevin, I wasn't planning on talking about rebasing, but that may be part of the lab. Let me check on that. If not, we will talk about it at the start of lab. Okay. Remind me though. We will. Thanks. Okay. Sorry about that. This says your turn. If you are doing this, I'm assuming that you had enough time to follow along if you were doing it, because that was not the fastest. I wasn't just blazing through the slides. We were kind of typing things in. You will get practice on this in lab as well. But the idea is you can go in this and you can set up your file. And if you do everything except get off down in the weeds on setting up the Git repository, it'll go pretty smoothly. And I don't know what happened there. I just put in 300 files for Team 20, created a new repository for this year's code, and put in the 300 files from last year's code as our starting point. If you're familiar with it, they're doing a modified schedule this year because of COVID. And I still managed to forget one of the key steps. All right, branching. Branching is important because branching allows multiple people to work on the same code and to work on the same, like if you want to work on my exercise 05, you can do that. But if we're making changes that clobber one another, or if you don't want to be bugged by my changes, you want your stuff to stay pristine until you get it figured out, which makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want to develop in an environment that's constantly changing out from under you, particularly if you're trying to track down bugs. You want to work on branches. So branching in Git, one of the things that Git was designed for, where it has an improvement over previous methods, CVS, or RCS, or source save, is that it has a really lightweight way of going through and doing branching. So if you do a Git branch now, it'll say master. We can create branches. So let's come in here. We will come in and we can do Git branch, and we'll see if we just have master. We can do a Git branch, happy branch, right? And now we should have two branches, master and happy branch. And now we can do Git checkout, happy branch, and checkout brings us between one branch and the next. And now if we look at our branch, we'll find out that happy branch is green with a star and master is not. So we're here, in a new branch. And yeah, there we go. Once you're in a new branch, you can do, whatever you want, for example. So we can come in and we can edit the file. Right? We can add changes, we can commit the changes and check the log, and we can do all that in the branch. And then what we can find out is that having done all that in the branch, we haven't actually changed master at all. So let's see. What are we supposed to edit here? We're going to edit the file. Okay. So now we can come in here and and we will edit our file. We'll commit it into happy branch. I'm not feeling happy today, by the way. So I'm kind of irritated. The choice of branch names were from Luis Ibanez, who was a very nice guy and generally pretty happy. But I think maybe we need to change that. Not really. We're in good shape. So we can come in, we can edit the README. Right, this is the status of the README. This is on happy branch. Right, we can look at it. It's modified. We can do a git add -u. And commit that in. So now we've committed something onto happy branch, right? And we can say git log, and we'll see our last commit. And if we look at our status, we'll find the status is normal. And if we do if we look at the README, it has on happy branch in it. Right, so we've now modified our branch. We've modified a file in our branch, and the question is, what does that do to our master? Well, it doesn't do anything to our master, right? We can come in here, we can do a git checkout master. Look at our branch. We're now on master. We can do a status. Right, we're up to date. We can look at the file. And what's missing is that little thing that says we're on happy branch isn't there, because that change is isolated to the happy branch. It has been brought into master. Well, let's say we've worked on our change for a while. We've decided that those are exactly the 7 characters or so that we want added onto into the README. So now we're at a point where we want to kind of bring those together and bring the development into the master so that everything's up to date. It's as simple as doing a git merge. Right, we're in master, so we're going to merge in happy branch. And when we do that, now if we look at the file, it has the changes for happy branch in. So now we've brought all the changes that were applied to happy branch into our master, and we can do something like git log and look, and there's our little branching comment, and we're now back up to date. All right. Once you've kind of merged your stuff in, particularly if your development's done and you're not going to go any further, you can come in and you can do a git you know what? I better not do this till I find out whether we're still using it. We can do this again. Let's say we have additional changes we want to put in. We can do a git branch, happier branch. I don't remember whether I access happy branch again or not. We can go into happier branch. We can check out into happier branch. Right? We've now created happier branch. We can now check out happier branch. Right, there we are. We can edit it again. Or even let's add a new file. Vim new file. Get branch, sad branch. Well, it would be a beautiful day for a school day, but now we're remote. Even my son going to high school doesn't have a day off today. We have a beautiful 8 inches of snow. I got up early and did my snow blowing. we can do a Git Status here. We'll get new file. Look at the status again. Right? We can do a Git commit. My little commit, Luis Abanya is an optimist. I think that's fair. And we can look at our repository. We now have Readme a new file, and we can look at our status, and everything should be clean. And we can look at, or it tells us that we're on branch happier branch, and now we can do a git checkout. Well, we could go either happy branch, or we could go master. We can merge into either one of those. I think we're going to merge this into master. Yeah. So we'll come down and go into master. And we can look at git branch. Right. Notice that this is telling us that we haven't pushed, this line is telling us that we haven't pushed our changes out to our repository on GitHub. So none of these changes will show up on GitHub, and I'll show you that in just a second. Now that we're there, we can merge in happier branch. We'll use a flag no fast forward this time. Fast forwarding is when Git decides it can get from where you are to the new head without having to merge everything in exhaustive order. So it's a little bit faster. No fast forward is when you have complicated commits where maybe the order matters more, so that bringing them in out of order would cause conflicts. This will make the commits. Each commit will be made individually. So we will merge happier branch in here, and now even our master has new file.md, and our master is clean, except now it should have three commits that haven't been made up to master. Let's see. Git branch, sad branch. Okay, cool. Any questions so far? Right, we're not going through anything Herculean. This isn't the 7 tasks. But it's just one of the things we want to make sure that everybody's kind of grounded. If you don't understand Git, the rest of this semester is painful. So let's make sure we get this one right. Merged it in. There we go. There are some tools that come with Git. Git K is a tool that we can get, and I actually didn't install this. And I am not actually sure if this will work. So I meant to check that before this class. It will. I can tell you it works in Linux. What I'm wondering about is if it will work with Git installed on WSL, because it does bring up a browser window kind of thing. So some of these things have problems with WSL. At least some of these things in the past have had problems with WSL. I had problems trying to install a few tools yesterday. So if you do have problems with GITK and you want to make sure you're working correctly, we can take a look at those at lab on Friday, and we'll see if mine works. Okay, mine works. I'm a little concerned about, well, let's see if we can make it show up. We had that little problem at the beginning, remember? I'm a little bit, okay, did that show up? Ah, it showed up. Awesome. So this is what mine looks like. We have this is remote's origin master. That's where the one out on GitHub is sitting. This is the happy branch that was merged in. Happier branch was brought out. That was merged in. This is where our master is sitting. So GITK is a nice way to kind of visually kind of glance through and see what you're doing. You'll notice our commit messages. Right, on happy. So these are the changes to the file we're making. Sorry. Here's our commits, file changes. This is where we started off. Put a minor tweak in, started some branching. So when you get lost and you don't really know where you are, GITK is a good place to kind of start looking at things. See, this brought new file .md in. So yeah, it's kind of a nice little visual way of walking through and looking at your commits and inspecting your branches. All right. You guys should be able to do this. I'm not going to pause for this because this is taking a little longer than we had some problems at the beginning and some other stuff going on. So I am going to count on you guys to kind of go through. And if you haven't kind of followed along and made sure that you can do these things, just kind of walk through. It's a simple little exercise to kind of bring things together. Oh, and if we now look at WD Turner exercise 5, what we'll see is that we pushed some stuff. So if we go to the code, we see our pushes, but not everything is there yet because we never pushed after the first push. So we can come in and we can push again. Well, we may have been able to get away with just git push at this point, but just in case, my fingers were already typing origin master because that's kind of a steady. And now what you can see is that we now have the two files in there, right? And all of our changes are in. And if we go in and look at the insights, we can see we can see that we made a bunch of changes on 4 commits, 9 lines changed. All right. I think the next one is shorter. If not, the lab should not take you guys very long. So if we have to, I will finish up this next part and maybe talk about rebasing in the lab, at the front of lab. But I do want to talk about